Hi, my name is Andrew Sears. I'm the president of City Vision University, and I'm here with Dr. John Frank, and he's going to be presenting for our major donor and planned giving course. Dr. Frank has worked in the development field for how many years now?
Oh, close to 40.
Yeah, and you've worked with a lot of organizations. I think last time it was something like 80 organizations that you mentioned that
Yeah,
you've worked with over the years. And
probably closer to 100 plus, but
yeah,
yes.
okay. And so you've had extensive experience, worked a lot with some of the biggest rescue missions in the country, and worked with a lot of other nonprofits, and especially, Christian nonprofits. So John wrote a number of books on development as ministry and Development 101. We use his materials in our courses. So John, thank you for taking the time to meet with us and to really give us kind of the hands-on what it's really like to work with major donors and planned giving. So, John, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, you can jump into the materials if you'd like now.
All right. No, I didn't want to do that. Says I'm
Yeah, so
screen.
yeah, I can see your screen. So just to connect this with the first week, this is the donor pyramid. And just as a reminder, in the donor pyramid, this course is focused on the top of the donor pyramid, major gifts and planned giving, whereas our fundraising course covers the entire donor pyramid. So, and John presented about the entire donor pyramid for that course, but this is really going to focus on some of the same concepts, but on this top of the pyramid. But John, do you want to share more about the donor pyramid and how you kind of think about it?
Yes, just briefly. One of the important things you probably heard in the other course is one size does not fit all, or one strategy does not fit all. So each of these are different strategies based on the relationship. Now, when you look at First Time Impulse, we have mailings, we have emails, we have banquets, but in the major gifts and planned giving, I want to remind you that everything here is one-to-one. We're dealing with individuals here. We're not dealing with mass amounts of people. And so, as you may remember from my earlier books, my definition of development is creating opportunities to connect God's people to God's work. And with what we're talking about today, it is an individualized connection.
Great.
All right, so now we move on.
Yep.
All right. Now, the big word in all of this is relationship. And so, as we see here, half of the donor pyramid, you can see that if someone's a brand new donor and then you introduce them with some mailings, maybe newsletter, maybe appeals, maybe they become a 12 times a year donor. So you see growth in the relationship. And so this is just a depiction of many major donors will follow this path. Other major donors will come in reference from another major donor. So they come in at the same level or higher. So we'll talk about that specifically, but this just gives you the visual of how major donors may grow to become major donors in your organization. Now, this is a flow chart on strategic planning that we'll talk about later, but right now I'm just showing you where the plan giving and major donor strategies fit. If you look vertically, there are 4 boxes in that area of strategies, then core donor strategies, impulse donors, and new donor acquisition strategies. So this points out again that plan giving and major donors are at the top or highest givers in our comprehensive development strategic planning. Now, this one offers, again, most, if not all of this will be done on your computer, okay? By today, most departments, unless you're a startup, which you could be in these classes, this is how should I say, it's almost like instead of digital, it's analog, but it's the basic flow chart of how you handle information on individuals. So a name comes in, you may rate them as their giving level. Who are you going to have talk to them? The solicitation takes place, excuse me. And then responses, contact report will go through in this session, thank you note, and then all the different types of giving they may do: cash, gift and pledge, gift in kind, non-campaign use, real estate, estates, and then the thank you and accounting and reconciliation within your organization. So this is a manual visual system to know this is what your computer will do for you. But it's good that you understand it so that you can keep track of the relationship. That's all a database does, is keep track of a relationship.
Yeah. So can you go back to that diagram real quick, John? I might just connect some things in with the course. So in this course, just so you get hands-on experience, we're going to give you a sample access to a donor database with some sample data. We're using the database Bloomerang just because it's fairly easy to use, and they were willing to give us a database that you could have free access to. So it is one of the most popular ones, and they have some of the best resources on there. But if you're in an organization, you would do these processes. A lot of these processes you would do in Bloomerang or in your donor database. But the other thing is most organization is gonna have a development department procedures manual. And for each of these steps, you would have procedures that would say, okay, go here in Bloomerang and do this. And then, you know, just to connect in terms of some concrete, like how this would work for an organization. So,
and I'll just add
John,
one more thing to that, is that all of these are code driven. So all the different types of gifts are different codes. The different solicitors are different codes, et cetera, et cetera. So you may say, gee, I understand this, but you're going to have to understand the codes in your software program. Bloomerang will take you through that as well. But if you don't have Bloomerang, you will have to understand the code system that this relates to.
Yeah. So if you're creating a major donor department, and you want to create major donor procedures, this might be a good outline. And
Yes.
then, you know, essentially what you would be doing is you need to write your procedures. You need to have donor software, and then you need to outline how do you do each of these things. And in many ways, you're going to need to configure it, because a lot of times out the box, they're not going to have all the fields you want in a, you know, report. So you're going to have to add some custom fields. And what you're talking about, the codes, some organizations might call those tags, or, you know, some way of categorizing your donors so that you say this person is a major donor, and then here's our process, you know, for that. So, okay. So John, you can go to the next slide if you like.
Okay. Now, this is basically understanding a contact report. So every time you meet with the donor, whether it's in, and again, we're focusing on major donors today, whether it's a phone call, email, in person, at an event, those kind of things. Now, again, this form can be produced by your software if it's set up to do that. If not, it's a simple piece of paper you can make copies of that. Who's the person? How did you contact them? What was the date of the contact? Location, proposal. Did you make a proposal? How much? And then comments or response. The most critical part is at the bottom. What's next? The follow-up. And this is where your software will be instrumental. And you saying like, okay, I had lunch with donor Mrs. Smith in March. She'd like me to contact her again in November. Well, how do you do that? Well, that's done by the software that gives you a report in November. Who are all the people I said I would follow up with in November? But so in the bottom, that can be manually, you fill it out. Some fill it on their way to the airport or in their car or whatever. But then it gets entered into your software, where there is a major donor section that will remind you of next steps, next action steps. So that is just a basic contact report form, but very important. especially if you're the development officer and your executive director or president goes on a donor call, the last thing they want to do is fill one of these out. So you must make them or do it for them. But this is where we get the info of what did you talk about into the computer, because a year later, you cannot remember all these relationship points. That's the key point. If you're meeting with 100 people in a year, you cannot remember every detail. Okay? So that's what this form is for.
Yeah. So often if you have a sequence of 5 meetings with someone, you can go back and look at, your notes from all those meetings. And the other thing I would just add, in the donor management system, use that form as an example. A lot of the systems won't have all those fields. So you have to make sure you have all the fields that you want to track and add them as custom fields.
Yes.
All right, go ahead, John.
No, this is a major donor prospect tracking form. It's used in annual major donor work, and it's also used in the capital campaign. Now you may say, John, that's manual, that's Excel. Yes, again, just like before, I start with a manual system to understand the purpose of the form, and then you can look at your database. Remember, database software has 2 important components: input and export. What are you putting in, and what kind of reports can you get out? This is a sample of a report you get out, which helps you manage your process. You have names. What were they rated for? They were rated for $50,000 or $1,000. Now, the readiness, which I'm going to go through in more detail further on in the session, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Down at the bottom, you see readiness ratings. 1, they're ready to be solicited. 2, needs some cultivation. 3, needs much cultivation. 4, they're capable of a major gift, but their interest is unknown. Now, focus of giving has to do with the annual report. They might say, where needed most, or they might say project A that you presented to me. The purpose of contact might be annual, et cetera. And the cultivation strategy is what's next? Oh, I'm going to give them a tour of the new project, or I'm going to write to them, or et cetera, et cetera. So this is your action management of, 10 donors at a time. And we'll get more into this later in the actual solicitation section. All right.
So, John, I think that's the end of that section, but I do want to ask one really critical question. One of the things I've seen over the past 20 years is major donors and planned giving has gone from kind of just being a lower priority item to becoming, honestly, the driver of growth for a lot of organizations. Could you share what you've seen as organizations mature and how much they, focus on major donors and planned giving, and maybe some of the reasons for why you think that is?
Okay, and that's a great point, but a complex answer. Many times it's to get cash in, and planned giving isn't necessarily that high priority. So you're working on your annual fund, you're working on major donors that might give you something now, like a $500, $1,000, depending on the size of your budget. The other thing is definitions. Many today say planned giving includes major donors, or they are one and the same. In other words, you go to talk to someone and they may be making a major gift now, but they've also have you in their estate planning. So it kind of depends on what your strategy is, but it's related to the Deuteronomy scripture that says each of you should give in proportion to the way the Lord your God has blessed you. Some people may be, well, I have you in my estate plan, so to protect your organization, I'm going to give you annually $1,000. I want you to keep going, so that my estate gift means something. So there's a variety of different ways to look at it, Dr. Sears, as where you are. The other thing is personnel, staffing. If you're a single development officer, a small office, planned giving can sometimes be reactionary. Someone contacted you about how to leave you in their will, and you followed up from there. Others will be, that you've marketed for wills or something, or other times, which I recommend and actually did when I was a director of development at the Union Gospel Mission in Seattle. I had a consultant in planned giving. And so he stepped up the tempo while I was working on a capital campaign. He was following up planned giving prospects daily.
Yeah.
So does that help give you a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. And I think part of what I've seen is just, as more and more wealth has been going
Yes.
to the top, 1%, 5%, 10% in the United States, that's where a lot more of the giving is been concentrated. And so I
Absolutely.
think that a lot of organizations, so not just on the planned giving side, but major donors. So, what I've seen is a small organization, they might be driven by 1,000 small gifts, whereas a larger organization, and I would say 30 years ago, that most of it was a bunch of small gifts, but now half might be driven by major donors and planned giving, because
Absolutely.
that portion just has a lot more, disposable income.
Well, absolutely. And it's a boomer. I'm 67, I'm a boomer, and the wealth and prediction of wealth transfer is in the trillions. But the other thing is, there are those that will teach every organization, large or small, is capable of receiving $1 million gift. That did not used to be the case, but now there are those that are capable of giving $1 million gifts to even small and medium organizations. So they follow the same process that we're teaching today. They may have more staff, a larger organization, but the concept of working with individuals is still there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks. Well, I look forward to the next session. Thanks a lot, Dr. Frank.
All right.